Hey guys, Baltic Dragon here. Before we roll the tape, just wanted to apologize for the technical issues we had during this interview. All the recordings in separate tracks were just, didn't work. So we had to edit from a single track. That's why you'll have some background noise, someone tapping away happily on the keyboard. And yeah, but I think it shouldn't be too bad. So enjoy this one because it's pretty interesting.
Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 18 of Air Combat Simulation Podcast. And today we're going to have a look at the process of creating maps for the DCS world. And for that we'll use the example of a very specific map, which is the Falklands map being developed by the RAZBAM simulations. So we have some developers from RAZBAM that we're going to talk today about it. And we also have a widened panel and we'll probably be doing that more often as of now. So apart from usual suspects, we also have Tricker with us, whom you know from Alert5 and his YouTube channel. Hey, Tricker.
Hey guys, good to be back.
And we also have Casmo, who is host of the Low Level Hell podcast. Hey, Casmo.
Hey guys, what's going on?
And the usual suspect is Goat or Rob. Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
And I'm Baltic Dragon. So, and with us today, we have two RAZBAM developers who are working on the Falklands map. So it's Clark, or RAZBAM Spectre. Hey.
Hey, guys.
And the Reaper. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. We had a little bit of technical problems here before we rolled the tape, or we tried to roll the tape a few times. Hope it will keep rolling till the end. And as you're listening to this, we're still waiting for 2.7. I mean, as we're recording this, we're still waiting for 2.7. I hope when you listen to it, the 2.7 is already out, and we should have some nice screenshots from Falklands map for you, exclusive for ACS. But before we get to the main topic, can you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves? How did you get to RAZBAM and to developing a map for the DCS?
I guess I'll start. So basically, I've worked in IT for 35 years, and I've always been interested with a keen affinity for anything graphical. Back in the day, it was Maya, and then I transitioned to 3D Studio Max, then back to Maya, just making models and rendering and just anything graphically. And then I think it was about 4 years ago, I started to make mods for DCS, the British stuff, like the Scimitar and stuff like that. The V2 rocket we did. And then I was approached by RAZBAM and said, did I know anything about terrain? And I said, nope. But I've got a keen interest and a technical brain sort of thing. So that's essentially how it sort of kicked off. And then I started working through all the training material that ED provided, and then just basically grew my knowledge from there, really.
All right, and Ripper.
Hi guys. Myself, I was in the Royal Navy for 14 years. Then joined the police as a firearms instructor, and I met Clark totally by accident. We were flying a virtual squadron together. He mentioned the Falkland map. I told him that I'd spent about 6.5 years of my life down there with a couple of drafts, and we got together and just went from there.
But do you also have some skills in software development?
Nope, no skills. All taught by Clark on the vector data, and just with the TDK come online, and it's been an evolving process from there.
All right. So before we move on, if you could tell us, I know there's a specific tool that ED is giving to the map makers, so to speak, right?
Yeah, it's called the Terrain Development Kit, and it's an internal, kind of an internal developed tool from ED, which you get, which is all fully protected by HASP keys and stuff, so you can't just get the software and run it. And you have to, it's not something, people have this perception of the Terrain Development Kit as being, oh yeah, I'll just say, drop some terrain in there. Oh, look, I've got all these objects in here. I'll have one of them, put that there. I'll have that, and I'll put that there. That's completely not how it is. Essentially, you get some example objects, and that's it. And everything else you have to make yourself. Everything.
What do you mean, this Casmo? What can you go into further into that? Like when you say examples, like buildings or just hills? Like
yeah.
Work?
For example, they give you within the TDK, you've got. I mean, they do provide some stuff like some of the lights, the runway lights, but you can quite easily make your own. But for example, the buildings, I think there's about 4 buildings, but they're all from the channel map. Oh, not the channel map. Yeah, Normandy. Sorry, and you can't use them because they don't fit in anything apart from Normandy, if you know what I mean, 1944. So everything you've seen with respect to pictures on the Falklands, I've actually sat there and made by hand.
Oh, wow.
That's textures, models, UVing, splat maps, everything.
So how does the Terrain Development Kit help you then? Like, what does it do for you?
The process is kind of, you start with an elevation map, and it's a specific type of elevation map, and that generates what they call an elevation spatial file, which is like a point cloud file, and from there you've also got to get OSM data for coastline, rivers, roads, lakes, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if you ever dealt with OSM data, but when you get it, it's really not accurate at all. So, for instance, if you've got a curved coast that you would normally do with 50 dots, the OSM data might have 1, and it'll be so jaggy, and you've actually got to spend a lot of time refining that coast to follow the actual terrain itself. So I think initially, because I started the project on my own because one of the other guys was unfortunately not able to do it. So it was just me, and I spent 4 months moving dots for coastline.
What do you use as the authoritative source? Like, so as you say, you're moving the dots and you're making it your own, but what are you referencing?
Generally, you use TIFF files. So you generate TIFF files from Global Mapper, which have geodata embedded in them.
Got it.
And obviously the TDK knows about geodata and how to position it on the map and stuff. And that's where you have like your vector data editor, vector viewer, and all that sort of stuff within the editor. So they provide that functionality and the ability to say they'll come up with some new technology. Like one of the things that you've seen in a few of the maps, if you look at the edge of the runway, in when Caucasus was first released, there would be a hard line transition or a very, very, I don't know, it's like a fingery sort of mossy material there. But now, if you look in Syria map, for instance, you'll see like a line, and it's got like dust, and it makes the terrain blend a lot easier with hard lines. So that functionality is called decals, and the ED have actually developed that. Now there are some example decals that you get, but you can also make your own.
Yeah, because I guess I thought with the TDK that it was just a set of things that you could modify a little bit and then drop into place, but this is a whole lot of from scratch development.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you've got the files there to reference if you need to reference stuff, but you may end up doing it a completely different way. I mean, just because the way, for an example, right? Generally on an object that goes into the TDK, things use tileable textures, so they're 1K tileable textures. Now, ED will generally use UV channel 2 for the coverage, so you scale your objects to get the right number of tiled objects on your patch of UV space. So it's up to you what you do. I mean, you could use UV channel 5 if you want, 4, 3, 10. It doesn't really matter. But I tend to try and follow the best practice, which I think that ED have already worked out, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a really dumb question because I know nothing about this. So, online you can buy these 3D models. Is there, and those are not translatable at all into this universe? Is that right? Perfect.
They are, in the fact that they are a model, and you still got a ton of work to do to them, because the way planes work in DCS, essentially you could texture a plane in Substance Painter or Substance Design and make materials for it and stuff like that. But bringing that as an EDM into the sim, you would have a set of textures per UV tile. The TDK doesn't work like that. It's all 1K or 2K tileable textures generally. So your UV channels are completely different. You've got multiple UV channels. I mean, one of the models I've got UV channel 2, 3, 4, and 5. So they're all different, and they all do a different thing. So they've all got to be done for every single model that you take in.
So how do you plan a project like this? I mean, if we take a step back and you kind of, I mean, it sounds extremely complicated. It sounds like a lot of heavy lifting. How do you start a project like that, and how do you do the planning for it?
I mean, to be honest with you, it wasn't really planned. The concept was planned. In other words, we decided that we were going to do the Falklands Island. Okay, so we knew the Falkland Islands, we knew where they were, we knew what they were. We got the georeference data, no problem. We got the OSM data, no problem. And then you kind of evolve from there. So it's not something that you would learn and then start your project. It's kind of a learning process all the way.
Got it.
So it's not something that you guys mapped out and said, okay, we're going to work on the coastline, we're going to work on the hills, we're going to work on the buildings in this order. It's, you kind of go with what you have. And
well, no, there is a kind of process that you would do in order to get some sort of semblance of terrain in the map. You would have to have spline data, you would have to have georeference data, you would have to have elevation data. So when you have those, then you can build something, and not necessarily looking good, but you can build something. Then there comes the tweaking of all the vector data for the rivers, the roads, the lakes, the shoreline, and that takes months. And I mean months. I mean, we're probably looking at, I don't know, if we add all the points together throughout all of the vector data, you're probably looking in excess of 1 billion points.
Sure.
Let me jump in here because we have a special guest with us, Ron from RAZBAM, who's heading the RAZBAM simulations. Hey, Ron.
How you doing, guys?
And I'm sure Ron will be able to answer some questions we get from community that are not strictly connected with Falklands, and we'll get to that in a moment. But also, if I may jump in, there's a question about when you look at building things, it's like how much of it is handcrafted, or building landmarks, etc., and how much can you generate procedurally or by the computer, or is it you just start at the bottom of the map, let's say figuratively, and just move on placing and tweaking all the things that you put in there?
Basically, everything you've seen in the Falklands map, I've made. There is no, you can't get information, you can't auto-generate anything from satellite data, from images or whatever. So it is that is, you know, it's quite a tedious process. Not tedious, but a long-winded process. A building would normally take me 2 to 3 days. some of the more complex buildings like Ushuaia Terminal, a colleague of mine modeled it for me. It took me 2 days to UV it and 3 days to texture it.
So it's nothing like you can take like my 2 6-year-old boys and enlist them as labor to do something like that, right?
No. That'll be against the law, wouldn't it?
Not in my house.
So, but certainly you can reuse the same buildings over and over. Is there kind of like a criteria of like, we want to have X amount of buildings in the hopper that we can just use? That way, not everything looks the same, but we're not generating a new building for every single building.
It depends how you want to work, really. For some of the maps, they do use what ED call block technology, where they're rotating buildings and using them multiple times.
Sure.
But when I started the map, because I'm a very avid helicopter guy, I love anything to do with helicopters. And in the past, the helicopter experience hasn't been what I would like it to be. I wanted more detail. I wanted really, really cool textures. I wanted high definition. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was my aim. So I wanted to be able to fly down somewhere and, oh, look, there's a post box. Oh, look, there's somebody's washing on the line, or, whatever. Just to make it that much more visually appealing for people that fly low level.
Sure.
Is there going to be like cows and sheep?
We have got penguins and we've got sheep.
Excellent.
That.
See, I asked the good questions here. We got penguins.
There will be some other wildlife as well. But,
oh my goodness! I'm not sure we need to go on with the penguin. That is it.
No, but aren't penguins used to destroy ships?
You can possibly, yeah.
It's the other penguin.
Totally.
So is it just you working on it, Spectre? This whole map?
I'm the lead developer on it, and I control the builds and decide what I need to farm out to other people. But primarily it's myself and Ripper. Ripper's my vector data guy, so he does a lot of moving points. He does testing. He does basically whatever I ask him to do, essentially. And if he doesn't know how to do it, I'll show him how to do it, and then he's quite capable of going on and running with it until it's done, kind of thing. Yeah. I have about 4, 5, 6 other testers as well, so with varying degrees of hardware, going from mid-range, a couple of low-end specs to a high-end specs. So we always try and get a broad test of whatever I've asked them to test, kind of thing. So
right. Can you give us like a size comparison with the Falklands compared to another map that we already have inside of DCS?
Well, if we're looking at kilometers, we've currently built a map which has 1.5 million kilometers squared.
That sounds like a lot.
That's the biggest map so far in DCS.
Wow.
If you were to fly from south to north, I think it took you 45 minutes, didn't it, Rip?
Yeah, it was over an hour. I mean, with a Tomcat, even up at sort of 35,000 feet, I got to the carrier just with enough fuel to land.
And that was with bags?
That was with bags, yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to fly, for example, in a Harrier from Rio Grande to the Falklands, MPA, that would take you probably about 45 real minutes. So there's going to be some sort of modicum of refueling requirement going on, I think, as in real life.
So is this is the map based off like today's present day, or is it like based off like the 80s?
It's not based off the 80s because I think that's quite restrictive. I mean, if I based the map off the 80s, it would be just a big field with about 200 houses and a runway that nobody could use because it wasn't long enough.
Gotcha.
So that would restrict quite a lot of the aircraft that we have in DCS now. So what I've actually done, I've included MPA. Now there's a controversy whether I should have done that or not, but I think that's a good idea. But we will release at some point after the initial release a version of the map without MPA for those hardcore.
Can you tell me what MPA is? Because I have no idea what that is.
Sorry, that's Mount Pleasant airfield in the Falklands.
Okay.
It's the runway that was built after the Falklands War. So yeah, I mean it's a massive project. The map is really. I mean, when you fly over Ushuaia and down and look at the glaciers, and it's just phenomenal. It really is phenomenal.
So can you tell me where the penguins are? Last question.
Nope. there
See.
are some unique penguins, that's all I'm going to say on that.
Nice.
So just a quick question about size. So is everybody going to need a new SSD for this, or how does that? How do you when you're building it, it's got to I'm sure it's a certain size. Do you guys do some type of compression, or how does that work?
Well, when you build it through the TDK essentially, when you go and look in your core mods folder, you see the channel or whatever. You go and look in that folder. There's the structure and all the compiled files and all the clip map files and all that sort of stuff. That's essentially what the TDK does. It creates that structure for you, and using all the great stuff that ED do with their stuff, and allows you to transition from what you've got to something that is kind of a flyable map. So I mean, currently I just did a backup actually. So all of the raw content on my drive is 931 gig. So that's including all of the buildings, all of the textures, all of the Substance Designer files for the textures, all of the raw textures, all of the raw clip maps. We call clip maps satellite data.
It's quite.
That sounds a lot.
It's almost a terabyte of data.
Currently the map is 40 gig. That's how much the map is now.
And you mentioned the Rio Grande, or you mentioned that the continental part, let's say. It will be as detailed as the rest, or you plan to do it as some of the maps now, so you leave some parts of it to be added at the later stage after release?
I mean, with respect to adding parts of the map, there's not really anywhere we could go with the map, apart from Antarctica.
So, I should say a model, maybe, so you leave it less model than the Falklands themselves, let's say.
I mean, the terrain the terrain mesh will be there. That's for the whole. It's probably about 100 miles north of Rio Gallegos, and if you draw a line straight across the map, and we've got everything below that. With respect to runways and stuff, we have Rio Gallegos, Rio Grande, and Ushuaia. Those are the three that will be released with the map. If I get some spare time, then I may look at including some other ones. But yeah, we will be adding stuff to the map. Yeah, that's a definite.
So when it releases, though, so the Persian Gulf map is always my go-to complaint of a map where, you look at these and it's like, oh, there's a town there, and then you actually go there and there's nothing there, or it's just flat, picture on the ground of buildings. Is the Falklands, when it gets released, is it going to have areas that just completely aren't textured yet? Like, is it going to be somewhat of an early access type map, or is it, when it's done, pretty much all the towns are done?
Well, at the moment, for the Falklands area, there are no pictures on the ground. Okay. Everything is kind of there and populated. With respect to the sort of Argentinian side, Chile side, we've kind of just been able to get to that milestone where we've been able to push the TDK to a point where we've encompassed all this information. I mean, back in the day when I first started, I could build the map in 35 minutes. Now it takes me 3.5 hours to generate the mesh, 2 hours to generate the point cloud, and then 4.5 hours just to build the a workable copy of the game. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of scale of how much we're actually including. But I mean, with respect to textures and stuff, what we said, we would, around the mountain areas and stuff, we'll enhance the textures a little bit, but there won't be so much work spent down there because it's such a massive undertaking. But we will look at improving the textures over time when we got a bit more free time to spend on it. But at the moment, the priority is to get the block assets done, so we then can start populating the towns for Rio Grande, Rio Gallegos, and Ushuaia. Then there's the trees to put in. We've started to put the tree system in. So we have probably, I don't know, we're probably going to look at about over 1 billion trees. We'll have to go into the map.
Yes, amazing numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ED have been fantastic. I mean, currently they're working on a version of the tree which is super sort of tweaked for performance, but looks exactly the same.
It's a lot of trees. Sounds like a lot of clean air. Virtual clean air.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, have you received a know-how from ED or I don't know from other developers who do or build maps? Is there any discussion between you and them on sharing, I don't know, information, tips, tricks, etc.?
We share information with ED, and if we have a problem, we'll ask them, and they'll come up with a solution or tell us how to do it. But with respect to integrating with other developers, we don't really know, apart from Erga Media, who else have got the TDK. So I don't think that's something ED want to promote.
I don't want to take away from the terrain talk because this is all great stuff. But for like the Harrier, would we expect like a Falklands campaign for the Harrier?
Over to you, Baltic.
The plan is to have a full campaign for the Harrier, but I think it's now to run because we need a different version of the Harrier for that, right?
Hi guys. Yeah, well, I already started a Sea Harrier Everest.1, and right now, the steer model it's done, but it needs to be mapped and all the great stuff to make it workable. But it's been taken back since some other important stuff have been going into my current development timeframe. So, what is going to happen? And yeah, the proper Sea Harrier for the Falklands, and I'll try to push into a proper GR3 too. But I cannot really promise a GR3 just after you see a Sea Harrier. There are a number of reasons.
He said he promised.
He cut out his headphones.
But the plan is once we have a proper Harrier and some other assets, which we'll talk about in a moment. I'm already in touch with some guys that know a lot about Falklands and the war, and I'm planning to recreate the whole. It was like 6 days, 7 days. I don't even know yet. But anyway, recreate it as closely to the real fact as possible, and have a full campaign over there.
Wow,
cool.
That's really cool.
Well, I was just gonna say, kind of with that, on the website, I was looking earlier, and it did talk about some other assets that are being built. So, is this map going to ship with assets that kind of relate to the Falklands War, or am I just misreading that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Ripper answer that one because he's got a bit more involved with the assets.
Yeah, with reference to the assets-wise, we're going to have a lot of with the Royal Navy units and also all the units that were in the area. So, as for example, the Royal Navy, you're going to have the Type 21s, you're going to have the Type 42s, Type 22 Batch 1, County Class. Argentinian, there's the Santa Fe. There's also the small Argentinian patrol vessels that were there. Mm-hmm. So as to they're going to incorporate as much as we can.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, in the aircraft part of AI, I'm personally working in a Sea King. They have Pucara being created. That's going to be shipped as AI for the map, but it's been developed as a full model too. And also Canberra, that will be AI too from Argentina. That will be also shipped with the map. And probably, I don't think it will be shipped with the map or similar aircraft. I really can't talk about it, but there's some developments going on currently that might make me create an proper A4 for the Argentinian side. That will be a A4B, P, and Q.
All right,
that's amazing.
But those will be AI. But you know what? That will take quite some time. But if, like I said, there are some developments going on right now that might force me to some way to create them.
Okay, and what about ground units or infantry?
Ground units, I know the 105 they're doing. I know Clark was working on the uniforms for the infantry. So we just that's still being developed as we speak.
I think, talking from my standpoint, because Clark, Reaper, and all the Mad Open team are making amazing work. I think that right now the focus on this is to actually finish the map itself. All the accuracy is getting proper shorelines, mounts, and lakes, trees, everything. And then I think that the team will start devoting to create what is needed for the assets that are included with the map. This way, talking about infantry and vehicles and ships and stuff. But like I'm pretty sure Clark said before, he's actually the guy in charge of this world project. So I'm actually walking his way.
Oh, thanks, Ron. No, I mean, with respect to the units, we have got some of the units already. But people don't appreciate how much time it takes. It took me 2 months to get the Dumbarton Castle and the Leeds Castle into game. So that's 2 months of solid work. And that's just for one ship.
Yeah.
Normally I'd call them a boat, you see, but I get told off from ex-Navy boy Ripper.
Well, yeah, and then you add into that, like you said, it's space-wise, it's the biggest map. Now, how much of the map is water? Like, what percentage, roughly?
I don't know about the percentage, but I think, you've got to fly over just the Argentina/Chile side takes you a long time. You're probably looking at an excess of 30 minutes, 40 minutes to fly just across that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that equals about 69%.
I mean, put it this way: you could probably hide 2 or 3 carrier groups in the map and never find them. I think on one of our tests, Ripper put a carrier group down the bottom, and we said, right, we'll go and land on them. We couldn't find them.
That's pretty cool.
Did you enable the Tekken?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Seriously, guys. I mean, it's interesting that you say about the size, because when we first started with Clark with the project, the Falklands wise, I pretty much knew by like the back of my hand because I spent a lot of time down there. But when we introduced the Chile Argentina side, people don't realize how beautiful that part of the world is and how big and how it's very, very easy to get disorientated, even using Modcom, Navid, stuff like that, because a lot of it looks, you think, oh, I know exactly where I am now, and you look and you think, oh no. So it's massive, but you could certainly have quite a few different carrier groups operating on the map, no problem, and you'd have to go looking for them.
Yeah, I mean, just an example, one of the lakes is 102 kilometers long. That's just a lake.
That's a big lake.
Yeah. Big lake.
It's good fishing.
I used to fly around. I used to fly around the Patagonia and Ushuaia and the FDNE. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, well, I've been flying around that. It looks really amazing.
So I have a question. What kind of big picture, I guess? Why the Falklands? Like, what of all the places on Earth caused you guys to say, "Hey, we want to make a map of the Falklands area"?
Yeah. When I start talking with Clark about the idea of creating a map for DCS, I have to work with the guidelines that Eagle Dynamics gave me, and that's that I have to choose some interesting part of the world that can be available for us to create. It's not that you go and say, I want to create this part of the world, and it's okay. No, you have to go through Eagle Dynamics guidelines, and there is a roadmap they have, so we have to go with them. So I had some choices and options, and I discussed them with Clark. And at the end of the day, we both agreed that Falklands would be one of the best ways to start creating something for DCS. Not just because it was an island, because it's quite complex to put something into this simulator in a level that you can say, okay, let's gonna charge for this. So We started studying the other options, and Clark said, "No, I think that the Falklands should be okay." And then what started to be just a Falklands map became the huge map it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think initially for me, when I heard Falklands map, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I figured it was just going to be the actual islands and just the water around it. But I mean, as you've described and as I've seen in pictures, that it is a ton of land there in South America as well. So yeah, that's a huge map. I didn't realize it was that many millions of square miles, but yeah, I guess that's interesting because then it I guess it begs the question of if that's on somebody's roadmap, obviously are there other things, and so that kind of goes back to the conversation about what aircraft and what things are further along in the pipeline. So
no, I was just going to say, and initially it was just the Falkland Islands, but then we wanted to add some of the community voiced some concerns that they wanted some sort of coastline in there from sort of Argentina, and we tried it and it just didn't work. Whether it was a limitation at the time, I don't know, but and then I think it was probably about 8 months ago, we tried it again and we succeeded, but it was kind of maybe 100 miles left of Rio Gallegos. That's how much we had in, and I didn't like the way that the transition happened when it sort of just went into infinity. So I kind of tried to push it, and that's where we are today.
yeah, well, I think that's going to push it over the edge. I think that's what's going to make it a must-have map. Is just all of that territory, and then you've got some options for player on player because, like you said, you've got to make that crossing from Argentina to the islands and stuff. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah,
People want bigger
I think
maps.
the main thing about having that huge gap of water between the islands and the continent, and even down south in the Patagonia, is the fact that you have to learn how to start managing your fuel.
Yeah.
It's all fuel there. I mean, it's all how much fuel you can carry versus how much ordnance you can carry. It's not like I'm going to put a lot of bombs and take off and go away. No, you actually have to manage your fuel. And if users go by the actual kind of weather that's down there, you won't have clear skies every day. I mean, that's very stormy weather place. So there's a lot of things that are really, the way I see it, are really catch your attention to fly there. And not to mention that the whole thing looks so fabulous, not because we're development, because I mean Clark and team has done an amazing job, that it begs for helicopter action. Even in the islands or even in the south cone of the continent, it begs for helicopter action. I mean, naval helicopter action, rescue, whatever. It really does. And since it's so big, and I'm talking this from my point of view, just nothing announcing or anything like that. It also opens to a new perspective of flying in DCS. You see, there is a mod of a C-130, the Hercules. Yeah. So I think that in this map, you can actually use it as a, carrying cargo around because it's big enough. Not like you take a 2-minute hop. I mean, you really fly for a long time.
Did Ripper say he was there? Did you go there?
Yeah.
So what kind of climate can we expect? Like, I'm pretty ignorant on it. So what can we expect?
Bloody cold.
It's got penguins, so yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what else? I mean, there's so much land. What can we expect?
With reference to the climate, the Falklands is really strange because you've got sort of pure white sand beaches where you have a look at it and you could be anywhere, and yet it's cold. And yet, the first time I went down, I was expecting everything to be snow, and in 6 years, I've seen snow twice. And but the one thing that you can't describe to people unless you've physically been there is the diversity in the terrain. You go from mountains to like marshland, you go to sort of streams, coastal areas, which, I mean, one thing that caught my eye before I'd met Clark, and I remember when the Persian Gulf was released, I thought, oh, it's nice because they've got all the reefs and that simulated. And I know me and Clark discussed it, and Clark's done an absolutely amazing job at recreating all of it. And it's a bit like what they've done in Syria with the coast, where that looks new. It's exactly the same. To put it in a layperson's terms, the way I describe it is, if you cast your mind back to other flight simulator days, when Orbix sort of released their scenery apart from the block standard, it's that it makes that much of a difference. It's not like anything you've seen in DCS so far.
Interesting. Is there like a cool documentary that you guys can recommend for people to watch? Like for myself?
Off the top of my head, no, because pretty much as long as you don't go down the conflict side, because it'll be very, very limited. But the climate-wise it's strange, and there's so many. It's got its own little microclimates. I mean, just for example, there's about 273 different types of plant that's just native to the Falklands.
That's cool.
It's strange. It really is weird.
Yeah, with reference to trees as well, there seem to be a few of the screenshots that we put out have trees in. Now, there are trees, but they're not native to the Falklands. They have actually tried to grow trees there, and a couple of the pictures online is where, because there's a constant, roughly about a 20-knot wind, constant, if I remember rightly, and the trees kind of grow sideways, which is quite funny. But
yeah, I don't think most people understand like how far south the Falklands Islands really are. I mean, it's a bit of a haul down there. There's a great video if you're interested in the Falklands War, particularly how it began with the I don't remember. I think it's the Operations Room. The guy does a YouTube channel called the Operations Room.
Yeah,
there's a video. It's like 15 minutes long. And it's about the British bombing the airfield down there prior to the Navy showing up. And it was basically 2 bombers launched with like 15 in-flight refueling aircraft, because they would have to keep refueling each other to get the bombers there. And of course, one of the bombers breaks like right after takeoff. So it's one bomber going down there with all these refuelers. They get into a storm. Like it's this huge, like 12-hour flight just to go down there and drop one load of bombs onto this runway. And like 2 of the bombs actually hit. It's insane. But the Falklands War is just really fascinating, just because it sort of has this sort of World War II, Pacific theater motif, but with this a little bit more modern technology, Cold War era type stuff that's used. But yeah, then you just look at a map and you just see how isolated it is. I mean, it's relatively close to South America, but it's just way down there. And so, yeah, when you're talking about being cold and windy, it makes sense.
Casper, the mission you just described, this is going to be a full campaign I'm going to make. Like,
you just have to refuel over and over and over. 15 times.
Wow.
You will need a podcast to do that.
Mission 1, refueling. Mission 2, refueling.
Oh my god.
It's a nuts thing though. If you can find that Operations Room, it is absolutely wild to watch.
Oh, it's a great
I
channel.
subscribe to them. They have absolutely amazing videos.
Yeah.
And he really devotes a lot of time to it. I like his Mr. Storm's videos. Day 1, Day 2, air campaign, ground campaign. Really good.
Yep. Yeah.
No, I was just curious, like what a real perspective was from Ripper. So thanks for sharing your experience.
Yeah, no problem.
As Cosmo said, looking through the questions we had from the community, it looks like we've covered most of it, at least the ones on Falklands themselves. There was an interesting question though about possibility of getting some of those handcrafted parts of the map, like buildings, etc., and other stuff, whether it would be possible to add them as statics to DCS later on, coming with the map, so that mission builders would have more possibilities to change the environment.
That is a possibility, although that's an incredible amount of work. As I explained earlier, the difference between what a building in the map is completely different to an EDM. As we all know, that the planes and the mods people make, they're all EDMs. So you would have one texture set for the textures essentially. Whereas I would have to redo all of that and then retexture them by hand. But there is a possibility of that. But I mean, what we're trying to do, I mean, when I generate, for instance, the Stanley area, I will. Well, I wasn't able to do this, but through painstaking investigations through Facebook and everybody else, there's no Google Street View in the Falklands because they haven't been there yet, which is really a struggle to find information. But like if you go to the pubs there, so I've modelled the pub, and it's an exact representation of the pub in exactly the same location. So same as Mare Harbour. Mare Harbour is exact as I can get it. Every building should be virtually identical to what I could actually find out.
And there's also some other, let's say, landmarks, interesting things they could find on the map. Anything you can share about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have the Lady Elizabeth, the shipwreck there. So that's in the Stanley Bay. You can go and fly around there. We have MPA. The main hangar building's quite iconic there. There will be some interesting stuff across in Argentina, Chile side. The Ushuaia terminal is quite an architectural wonder. It's a bloody nightmare to UV, but it's an architectural wonder. Yeah, I'm gonna try and make it as realistic as we can with the information that we can get. Yeah, so I mean, it's all about the immersion for people, you know. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a helicopter guy, so you know, I'm really looking forward to the Mi-24 coming out and the Kiowa. But I mean, it's just going to be we fly helicopters there, so Ripper's in his Huey and I'm in my Gazelle, and we just head off, you know. And we try and tack, you know, SAM sites and stuff, and it's got such a diverse terrain that you for 1 minute you'll be on a flat plain, the next minute you'll be in amongst the hills, and you've got a lot of cover, a lot of scope to creep round and try and take targets out because they can't see you because you're using the terrain to the best to take advantage of that, you know.
Yeah. Well, as the helicopter guy here, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that with some of the newer maps. You know, the Syria map I think is great, but it's just good to see that direction being taken because you can get away with a lot when you're just focused on the jet guys, right? Because you don't need the map to look all that great, you know. Hence the parts in the Persian Gulf that are just not really there because the jet guys aren't going to notice it. But it's good, and I appreciate that the attention's being taken to have that detail that you can see down low. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know if you are aware that we already have a new solely devoted to choppers team. We're developing a series of choppers.
Yeah, well, since you brought it up, I was going to ask about that.
Okay.
I mean,
blame me.
Yeah, well, I mean, what can you tell us about y'all's plans with the BO-105?
Yeah, well, as you know, the BO-105 is a joint venture with Miltech, and right now the work on part of the coding while we wait for some of the 3DR to be done is being done as it is right now. And I think that I probably will be the first one to see the light of day out from RAZBAM. But my intentions are to make the Sea King flyable as a full-fledged model. No, I'm not gonna say which one is the secret model, but I have 2-3 more I can speak freely right now. But we have quite a lineup for choppers to plan to come out. I have one I promised Clark I will do. It's a personal promise for him. So, yeah, you will see choppers coming from us.
Okay.
But you gotta keep in mind that, as I said before, we have to work by the guidelines set up by Eagle Dynamics.
Sure.
About what can be developed without stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't want to say politics, but there's a lot of backroom stuff that's got to go on as far as licensing and everything. So yeah, I totally get that.
Well, the thing is that, DCS is actually, I'm going to say the G game is actually a game, can be seen as a game. It does have professional side of it, so things have to be done very carefully and very professionally.
Sure.
In not just the art of how you replicate things for a simulator, but the way you deal with licenses and information regarding very actual planes. So it's a very thin line we have to walk, and we have to, I know people, for instance, say, oh, I have the carrier NATOPS, and it said that this thing does that, and your plane doesn't do it in the sim. Yeah, hello, we can't put it in the sim.
Yeah.
And it's not because we cannot do it. It's because you simply can't. The Harrier is a pretty much very active plane used by the Marines Corps. And Spain and Italy and some stuff that we simply cannot replicate now because we don't want, because we can't. And it's not just us. You can ask anybody in Dynamics if they are free to speak about it. That goes for the Hornet, goes for the Viper, goes for what happened with 15E, goes for the 18C2. It happens. I mean, there's a very fine line we have to walk, and some stuff that we simply cannot do it. Doesn't matter. Whatever you found, a manual, in NATO, a pilot guy, whatever you want to call it, saying, oh, the plane does this. It doesn't matter if it's right there. If we cannot replicate it because there are some lines, some rules about it, we simply cannot do it. We have to do it in a way that looks familiar or as close as possible. And like I said, it goes for everyone in this business. I mean, when you're creating a plane that's already being phased out and it's not interested for anyone, okay, you have more room to play around. But when you're creating planes pretty much in use, but not just the U.S., some other air forces, you have to walk by the rules and pay attention to the stuff that you simply cannot put there. Doesn't matter if you know it works like that. Doesn't matter if you have the Bible of the plane that says that this thing works this way. It doesn't matter because I really don't care how you got it. The thing is that you cannot put it in a simulator or a game or whatever you want to call it. You simply can't. Sure, in our case, RAZBAM, we do have, as you know, French Air Force is using our Mirage, and the T9 for Tucano, sorry, will be used. It's primarily being converted, is being in training tools, and then will can be used in a commercial venture like DCS. But there is stuff there that you simply cannot put for the general use. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you have the manual, you simply can't. And if we want to, RAZBAM as a whole want to keep moving in the professional world, you simply cannot do it. Just because it's your name as a company, in this case, my name as a company, and the team that I represent, because it's my name up there, but I have a big team behind, and they are really the true artists and geniuses behind it. I have to play by the rules. These are the rules. I mean, somebody doesn't like it. I'm sorry. This is how it is. And that's just me. Everybody, absolutely everybody in this business, in this creating third-party licensed products for DCS in Dynamics, have to go by that rule. Doesn't matter how you word it, because you can go to any forum and say, "Oh yeah, we can do this, that," and you probably replicate whatever it is in the manual, and you say, "Oh my God, it's amazing how they do this." Yeah. Doesn't matter if you put it that way. At the end of the day, it simply cannot be done the way it worked.
Yeah, certainly there's rules in place that have to be followed for one thing, for licensing, but two, just for the legal, ramifications of it and national security, quite frankly. So
you put the nail. Yeah. You hit the nail. National security, not just for the U.S., for everybody using this plane.
That's right.
So sure, some guys decide to make planes that are no longer used or being phased out. But we go with the current flow of planes that are being used, because part of my business is creating training tools. So That's how to put it. So uh, uh, I know you're gonna. I'm pretty sure you're gonna be asking about the Super Tucano. That that's exactly what's going on with Super Tucano right now, for instance, or the F-15E Strike Eagle. These are planes. Are F-15E Strike Eagle is pretty much the spearhead of the United States Air Force interdiction force.
Mm.
And the A-29 Super Tucano is right now the cutting edge in turboprop combat aircraft. And they do have information that simply cannot be put out for the public. Doesn't matter if you have the manual. I really don't care if you have the manual. Eagle Dynamics doesn't care if you have the manual. But what you're gonna see in the plane is gonna be a replication as close as possible and legally as possible of the actual plane.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some boundaries we simply cannot cross.
Sure.
It's good that you came up with this, because as you can expect, we had quite a few questions about both F-15 Eagle, Super Tucano, and the MiG-23. So, any updates on the development process on those?
Okay, yeah, sure. Which one do you want me to start? Okay, let's start with F-15 Israel, what I think is what everybody is expecting and dying to hear from it. I don't know if you follow my Discord, the RAZBAM Discord. Yesterday I put a comment saying that we broke the plane. And everybody was, oh my God, the project is dead, whatever. It's pretty funny. But what I meant with the break the plane is that I was talking with Tim, he is the chief developer. And I said, hey, guy, dude, I need some pics to show the people. And I say, I can't, I broke the plane. He meant that he actually, since he's doing the texture art, and he simply opened it up, split up to do it. So there were no new pictures. So I said, okay, we broke the plane. I didn't imagine it would create such a stir in Discord. People think that project is canceled, it's dead, whatever. No, it's not like that. It's just technically bingo. So right now, as you may know, we are just finishing what's left and creating new stuff for the Harrier and Mirage. And there are a lot of new updates for these two aircraft that's coming with DCS 2.7. Fixes, new features, because we just add all the latest features, not all, but most of the latest features the current night attack Harrier has, and also fixing, updating, and enhancing some functionality in the Mirage. All that will be available in 2.7. Of course, probably some bugs will come. But since that's going on around the coding department with those two aircraft, what we have decided is to finish the art of 15E, so coding into the aircraft can go pretty smooth in the production line. And right now, we're just waiting for the art to be done. It shouldn't take that long. The steer model is pretty much complete in a way that if we will release it in 1 week, I'll say, okay, you can do it. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. But that's how good the exterior model, how far the exterior model is. The cockpit, it's still being worked on. As you know, maybe you don't know him, but Tim Taylor, who is the chief developer, is very picky when he puts out. So he's always enhancing and getting things better for the plane. So it's taking his time, which really doesn't impact on doesn't give an impact on the schedule of the plane, because like I said, we were just finishing what was left of the Harrier and Mirage and MiG-19, and it's pretty much on schedule. I don't like to give release dates because it can be before, can be after, but you can rest assured that it's on our development schedule. We are online. Goals are being met, and will be available in the time we think. It will be ready when we already think it will. Regarding MiG-23, the MiG-23 had a problem. These things are being created by people, and COVID-19 really hit some of us hard, and the developer was hit by part of the tragedy. Thank God nobody died, but this particular problem with him actually delays one of the 2D art. which he is getting back into in line with that. And we have all the information ready to be coded into. So since it might feel like there's no news in the MiG-23, the reality is that the 3D model is pretty much advanced. Information for coding is 100% ready. That means that once you get into coding phase, it will be probably faster to code than the F-15E or the Harrier, or even what the Mirage was. Basically, because it's a I don't like to use the word simple, but it's a simpler aircraft than the other ones, and or maybe it's not that complex. So the fact that you don't see anything new on it doesn't mean it's not being developed. And the Super Tucano, that's something that's been worked within Air Force. So while I'm not that free to talk about it until I'm released to talk about it, I can tell you that my plans are that it will be hopefully after it's released from the main customer by the end of this year. And DBO 105, like I said before, part of the coding process is already begun. It does have its own coding department. There's nothing to do with the guys working on the aircraft, the jets, or the Super Tucano. So it has its own schedules, and we are on track. I would like to say more, but I don't want to create too much of a hype before the actual hype should happen.
No, it's a good choice.
You don't want to pre-hype the hype or post-hype the hype.
Well, don't pre-hype it.
Speaking about hype, I'm probably both to Clark and Ron. After Falklands, with all the experience gained, and with ED probably not being very keen on doing, as from what we heard, the Vietnam map, would you be willing to tackle it in the future?
Well, if you ask me, I would say why not. But there's some stuff that have to be discussed with Clark and ED, and if it's available and stuff like that. But I think that Clark should answer the technical part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely look at doing another map, because I kind of a glutton for punishment, to be fair. I mean, people probably don't realise, but quite a few of us developers have got day jobs. So we work sort of 9 till 5 or 8 till 4, and then pretty much spend the rest of our lives doing stuff for DCS like I do. And it's pretty much been a passion of mine for the last 2 years. Pretty much every evening, every weekend. I keep getting it in the neck from the missus telling me I'm always in my room. But yeah, it's a passion, and you either love doing it or you don't. And yeah, I love doing it, and I'm certainly, if Ron wants to do that, we can certainly look at doing another map.
Cool. Yeah, well, I don't say that I have the door closed, but it's actually not just me to decide. It's something I have to talk with the team, and then discuss with Eagle Dynamics about the availability and all the proper channels that have to be gone through before we can announce a new map after we release the Falklands map.
Well, then let's hope that it happens. I think this is a very, I mean, the players really expect that one to happen. I think there's a lot of people that would like to have it in DCS at some point. I would really like
I think that the Vietnam map, in this case, Southeast Asia map, if Clark got me wrong, should be more complicated than the Falklands map.
I think that's a good point with ED suggesting that we just did like an island originally to get our teeth into it, sort of to get our find our feet with the TDK and the processes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we've certainly done that. So I think a more challenging project would be quite good.
Well, let's hope
As you mentioned,
happens.
there are absolutely no assets for Southeast Asia map currently, or aircraft or stuff. Well, there's none for the Falklands too, but Vietnam will be more. We need a lot more aircraft to be developed.
Yeah, that's true. We have Huey, but that's basically it, right?
Mm.
And MiG-19.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, it's not the same version, but you can use it.
Mm.
All right. Just going to questions. There's one about the naval, just to be sure that we covered everything that we were asked about the naval assets damage. But I understand this is on ED side. I mean, how it's being. There's nothing you can do about it. How it's modeled, right?
I mean, whatever ED's policy is, or if they have availability for a 15 hitbox on a ship, then that's how it will be done from us. So we do it to whatever ED standards are.
I think that's mostly it from my side. You guys have any more questions or some things you'd still like to mention about the Falklands and the projects?
I would just like to mention that some of these guys don't get a mention, but there's Nick at ED who provides us with support, and one guy that needs a special mention is Sergey. Absolutely fantastic guy. He leads up the development of the TDK, and there's nothing that guy won't do for you or try to do for you or try to give you the information. So I'd just like to, create a shout out to those guys and say thank you very much for your support over the last 2 years. It's been very much appreciated.
All right, and thank you very much for your time. And sorry for the technical problems at the beginning. We had good fun. And well, thanks, Ron, for joining us and giving us updates also on other things than Falklands. And thanks a lot, Cosmo and Richard, for being with us.
Yeah, it was fun.
I think we should do it more often with Air Combat Sim.
Yeah, whenever you want to invite me, I'll be here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.
We'll delete it. Can you try to boost your mic a little bit, Ripper?
Yeah, 2 secs.
Oh, now it's fine. Maybe just get closer to it.
Because the mic's not used to him not talking for at least 10 minutes.
Keep that part in.
How's that?
That's good.
I'll add it at the end. 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 I'll add it at the end.